Welcome back to my channel. This is Coach DC from All 22 Films. This is going to be part one of my look at the Seattle Seahawks running back position. We're going to focus on 28-year-old veteran Emanuel Wilson, signed to a one-year deal. He's, of course, going to compete with Jadarian Price and George Halani for time in a Seattle backfield that's going to look radically different without Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet for a period of time. We'll focus on some film from two different games in 2025, Wilson's third year with Green Bay. He's a downhill runner, if you ask me. A lot of the concepts that are called really line up, if you ask me, with what Clint Kubiak utilized, particularly when Zach Charbonnet was in the game. A little bit more downhill run concepts. I think Wilson stays square to the line of scrimmage. This is a Week 12 matchup against the Vikings where I believe he got 28 carries, produced about 106, 107 yards. Pretty good vision, if you ask me. Doesn't oftentimes end up with his shoulders not being parallel or square to the line of scrimmage. I would say he knows who he is at this level, or at least the way that things manifested themselves in the two games I focused on. This one, Week 12 against the Vikings, and then a Week 16 matchup on the road against the Chicago Bears. Basically, Emanuel Wilson, tough, smart running back. I think that they'll probably utilize more duo inside zone when he's on the field. Who knows how much of a look we'll get of him, in the preseason that's upcoming. Not a guy that you would expect to get the ball a ton in 2026 unless it's needed. He can produce. This game here, like I said, 27, 28 carries against Minnesota for 106 or 107. He only got like 7 or 8 carries in the next 3 games. So his usage was obviously inconsistent in Green Bay for obvious reasons. They do have a lot of options between Halani, Charbonnet, and Price, including Wilson, in that group of 4. Expect more duo inside zone, like I said, a little bit of counter schemes. This is a modified base 3-4 look by Minnesota, whereby they've walked up their hybrid safety linebacker, whatever you want to call him, Metellus, in the box as an inside linebacker, and then slid Eric Wilson out as an edge defender, number 55, off the left-hand side of your screen here. Again, a lot of downhill concepts. I think he's got better vision than many people have talked about. Either A, people that observe the entirety of the NFL, or unfortunately Packers fans who almost seem to turn on a guy if they leave their franchise. It's really interesting, a weird dynamic. But in any case, you can see Cashman is flashing here to the front side where Wilson was headed initially. The defensive tackle also is kind of stood up. I believe this is the right guard. Pull this back a little bit. It's actually the center. My apologies for that. And Wilson's going to cut off of that pressure, or off of seeing the other colored jersey, to the outside. One of a number of times in plays that I'll show you, in fact, where he kind of runs into an offensive lineman who's in his path. In this case, I think it's because the center is kind of being stood up by that nose tackle or defensive tackle, but because he's so downhill, he's got great second effort, in my opinion. Really strong up top. I think 225, 227, 228 pounds, somewhere in that range. Strong guy up top. I don't think that his vision is nearly as poor as some Packers fans made it sound when he, initially signed with Seattle. This play is kind of a good illustration of what I'm talking about. Sure, sometimes is it a running back's fault that he runs into his own offensive lineman? This is a little bit of a designed cutback or windback scheme. It's split zone, essentially, but I think it shows off the fit for Wilson. And when I say shows off the fit, I'm talking about what was run in Seattle in 2025 under Clint Kubiak and what we can expect to continue to rely on this season. So the right tackle is going to get stood up by this 4-eye, this defensive end, defensive tackle hybrid who's lined up in the B gap. The tight end, one of the two tight ends, is working across the line of scrimmage. It's 12 personnel. And when I say designed windback, I'm talking about Wilson opening to the left-hand side of the offense, the right-hand side of our screen, and then it's designed for him to go underneath of this block, this kick-out block, slice block, really, because the tight end's going down below the legs, below the waist of that edge defender, Turner. It's a designed windback, and I think it really fits well with what Seattle has used under Clint Kubiak previously and what we would expect them to see this season in 2026. Basically, I think he would have fit well last year in 2025. Certainly would have not been one of the top 2 guys with Kenneth Walker III there getting his second 1,000-yard season as a running back. And then Charbonnet, pre-injury at least, being a guy that they could rely on and carry the load, carry the offense in certain situations. Like I said, I've already alluded to it. It was a little. It's always unreal to me when a player leaves a team and the fans almost kind of flip when they leave. Most of the discussion of Emanuel Wilson was really negative, in particular for being a guy who was a undrafted free agent that initially went to the Broncos and then ended up in Green Bay in 2023, and also was pretty reliable for them, like situations like this against Minnesota when he was suddenly called upon to carry the ball 20 plus times. Not statistically, nor in the games that I focused on, which was these two and a couple of other games that I'll talk about in a moment. He's not a huge impact guy in the pass game, in my opinion. Now, this is a 2nd and 7 to catch out in the left flats, the top side of our screen. It's a good option, in my opinion, overall. 1 year, I think the initial contract or the cap hit is almost $1.6 million. Has the potential to get up to like 2.1 or 2.2. This is a snag flat concept, so Wilson's going to run the flat, illustrated by that red line to the top of the screen. And then the receiver, I believe that's Romeo Doubs, the snag concept, angled hook, if you will. He does have really good moves. I don't think Wilson's a big play guy at that level, but he can make people miss with time and space, and you get an idea of that here. Murphy, pretty talented corner for the Vikings up top. Great reactions to the route by Wilson, and Wilson really quickly catches the ball, tucks it, one move, able to evade the corner, and get a bunch of yards to gain the first down. I think that this is the type of thing that he won't be asked to do a ton of, but has the skills, in my opinion, to be used out in space on shorter routes into the flats where Sam Darnold can access him to try to make someone miss and pick up a first down. Ideally, we would like for Wilson to get, between 350, 400 yards total rushing output in 2026, a little bit less than Green Bay got each of the last 2 seasons. And when I say that, I mean, in a perfect world, Price gets a lot of touches. Halani is solid. He's a very underrated guy, in my opinion. I'll do a second video, part 2, about him. And then maybe if we get some preseason film on Jadarian Price for me to evaluate and put out there, then I'll do so. Consider that part 3. In addition, Charbonnet returning at complete health, I think would push Emanuel Wilson to having less opportunities, even in a 17-game season. When I said earlier that he was a downhill guy who tries to keep his shoulders, square or parallel to the line of scrimmage, this is kind of an illustration of that. This is 2nd and 6, that same game, Week 12 against the Vikings. Going to be another broken tackle here, but it's going to be off the left side here. It's Andrew Van Ginkel, who's a spectacular football player, one of the most underrated guys, in my opinion, across the league. It's a counter scheme, and it gets kind of clogged up on the front side, the right-hand side of our screen. Eric Wilson, 55, who just had an unbelievable 2025, is going to kind of step down. And I think the tight end is also a little bit late here on what I would characterize as F counter. We're talking about the tight end who's in like return motion, 81 that you see moving here. I think he's a little bit late getting to the front side. And then Wilson's going to bring this back downhill. That's not the intended direction of this, but Van Ginkel's helmet right there. And Wilson just shrugs him off. I mean, it's pretty impressive. There's other players there, don't get me wrong. Wilson may actually, Emanuel Wilson that is, may actually benefit from a defensive tackle kind of standing up his own offensive lineman, but spins off of it, takes contact in the lower body from the defensive tackle 97. We're talking about down here, and still able to fight through it. I think he's an impressive athlete. He's not a game breaker, not someone you're going to expect, to have multiple 30, 40, 50-yard runs. But for what they've got, contract-wise, I think it's a very underrated signing in Seattle. Not just breaking the tackles, but protecting the ball from Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel is spectacular at taking the football away, and I think right here, he sees the football, Van Ginkel sees the football, and is trying to punch it out. Wilson spins and is able to protect it. Once or twice next season, or this season, I should say, I expect to see Emanuel Wilson get 12 to 15 carries. And look, one of my first exposures to watching him was a preseason game against the Ravens in 2024, and he tore up Baltimore. I mean, it was destruction from a Green Bay standpoint overall, globally, I should say. Wilson individually was like 11 carries, 54, 55 yards, somewhere in that range, 3 catches for 30 yards, just constantly making plays. It's not like the Ravens had their starters out there on the field, but it was really a one-sided destruction in Green Bay's favor. One more play, run concept from this win over the Vikings. Didn't really focus on his pass pro at all, so I don't have really any comments about that to be up front. Initially, this is downhill, and he's going to make a really good cut off of a jersey flash. And once again, it's Eric Wilson, who, if you don't know, I mean, he had 100-plus tackles in 2025, 6.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. It was truly ridiculous. In any case, the Vikings are slanting their defensive tackles to the defense's left, the right-hand side of our screen, illustrated by those 2 purple lines. And that's going to open up the strong side gap for Eric Wilson. And then Emanuel Wilson's going to cut off of him. So what I mean is we're talking about this defensive tackle stunting in this direction. And when I magnify this, I'll kind of annotate it one more time. We're talking about that guy there. That opens up Eric Wilson to go front side, and you can see what's setting up a big hit or the opportunity for such, and Emanuel Wilson sees it. When he cuts back, unfortunately for the Vikings, the defensive tackle also jumps back into the gap where Eric Wilson is. And so that opens things up for Emanuel Wilson. He was impressive in this game. That was part of the impetus for me to do the video. I originally cut this up in the middle of the summer to talk about Wilson. I think he's ready for these types of concepts. We didn't see a whole lot of outside zone. I don't expect to see him utilized on, like pin pull toss was something that Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet had success with in 2025. Downhill runner, efficient, economical with his cuts, with his feet, in my opinion. No wasted motion, and someone who's very strong up top and can break tackles in that confined space. All right, switching forward here a little bit to a game against the Bears in Week 16. I think he had 16 or 14 carries in this one. We do have a horizontal concept here, more towards the sideline, or at least that's how it ends up. I will show both angles. This is the all-22. So it's very interesting what's happening here. The ball is in the middle of the field. So Chicago has matched an 11 personnel grouping, 2 receivers to the bottom side, receiver, and a tight end to the top. So Chicago has matched that with their inside linebackers kicked over in this direction to the side of the tight end, and nickel DB C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who of course at this point has since moved on, I believe, to the Buffalo Bills. The motion also pulls the inside linebackers to the top side of our screen, gets them to move a little bit, and you'll see the end zone angle here in a moment. And what that does is really leave C.J. Gardner-Johnson on an island to the bottom side. Emanuel Wilson is recognizing this kind of unique stunt that the Bears are using on a rundown. Defensive tackle getting upfield, defensive end jumping underneath. It's not unusual to see a TE stunt, tackle end stunt, but on a rundown, number one. Number two, with very little run support in the form of a nickel defender, wide receiver gets to the safety. Wilson bounces it outside. You don't see a ton of this, and I think you get an idea here that he's not a burner, but he's not slow, Wilson. He won't, be as quick in short space horizontally as Halani is. Halani's got a lot of jitterbug-type moves where he can make people miss. You saw evidence of that in the playoffs. I think he had a really nice catch and made a couple people miss against the Rams on a critical 2nd and 12. Nor will he have the game-breaking speed to threaten to score from 50, 60 yards out like a Jadarian Price. But I think Emanuel Wilson is very smart. He understands the concept. Really good vision and awareness, especially of the defensive tackles. I think this is where he specializes in making sure that if a defensive tackle wins a cross face, then he'll cut things back. So another factor here is the motion pulls the inside linebacker 53 out of the picture. So you don't have any backside inside linebacker support from 53, either in that direction if Wilson were to cut it back, or scraping over the top of 91. So it really puts C.J. Gardner-Johnson on an island. And because of what the Bears do with their defensive end and defensive tackle, I talked about it a little bit from the all-22 angle, getting 50 up the field and then 90 jumping underneath, I think Wilson recognizes this. I think he sees it visually pretty much right now. and he sees that he's going to be able to horizontally press this right now and get underneath of the D tackle going upfield and run away from the defensive end 90. I kind of cut off the film here. I'd already shown you the all-22. Basically, I think he's very decisive. I think he understands the schemes, where he's supposed to go, and in this case, because of the stunt by the defensive end, defensive tackle, it just widened things up even more. This will be the last play that I show you here. It's very Kubiak-esque, in my opinion. It's a 1st and 10 from that same game, Week 16. I believe it was a win against the Bears, but I could be wrong. I refer to this as jet dive. Now, first of all, the Bears it's an 11 personnel grouping for Green Bay, and so the Bears are in their nickel platform, nickel 4-2-5. Number one. Number two, it's a run concept against the grain of the motion. So the motion is going left to right on our screen, and then Wilson's going opposite of the motion. That's why I call it jet dive. Jet is the motion, dive essentially is a zone concept opposite of it. I think he sees D tackle flow really well. I talked about it a little bit for the last play. Here, because there's a nickel blitz off the edge, we're talking about 24 who shows up right here for Chicago. This defensive end should be trying to get into this B gap. He should be trying to stunt or stem down into that B gap. Because it's a run concept away, even more difficult for 94 to do so from his alignment. Probably needed to screw down a little bit here, a tighter alignment, maybe off the outside shoulder, so that he could actually get into that B gap. 63 didn't really have much that he needed to do here, so they opened up this lane dramatically for Wilson. Again, the backside inside linebacker, 53, widened up by the motion, very similar to what we talked about on the previous snap. The only difference is here we're under center. There you're in the shotgun. Wilson, to me, this looks like a Seahawks run from 2025. Downhill, and then shoulders square to the line of scrimmage. Take the first lane downhill. He's got the vision to find it. I think he's very decisive. I think he's professional, a veteran, smart, and very efficient or economical with his footwork, number one. Number two, also appears to protect the ball really well. Again, I've only focused on these two games as far as the film I presented to you. Also watched the Ravens blowout win over Green Bay on the road late in the 2025 season. And then I spared you preseason film from Green Bay's destruction of Baltimore prior to the 2024 regular season. Like I said, this was my first look at the Seahawks running back room post-Walker and then without Charbonnet. This will be the first season where that duo isn't carrying things, right, since 2022, which was Walker's first year. Charbonnet didn't get picked until 2023. Those two have handled the overwhelming majority of the carries since then. This is maybe a new day, a new approach from an egalitarian standpoint, how many guys are possibly going to get the football, but I think you're still going to be committed to the run. Halani is the mainstay, or the holdover, I guess is a better way to put it. He made some clutch plays. He'll be part two of my look at that, and then I'm hoping that Jadarian Price gets in during the preseason. I can give a little bit of a look at that, but also recognize it might not be in Seattle's best interest to even put him on the field in the preseason. This is my first position look at Seattle on the offensive side. I expect Wilson to play a role before Charbonnet returns. Hopefully when Charbonnet comes back, right? He's at 100%. To me, Wilson's smart, efficient mover downhill. Not going to be used on pin pull pitch like Walker was. I think so far for his career, Emanuel Wilson, just over 1,000 yards rushing at 4.5 per carry. Each of the last two seasons in Green Bay, he's had just right around 500 yards rushing. Pretty solid guy up top. I think he goes 5'10", 5'11", 226 pounds. Short cut ability and steps. His worst runs will be 1 or 2 yard gains because he's committed to getting to the line of scrimmage quickly, making one cut for better or for worse unless we see him on more outside zone stuff where potentially there could be some issues with him just getting to the line of scrimmage, being able to press it quickly enough. I think this is a really good signing. He's a different running back than Walker. Obviously, he's not tasked with replacing Walker. The big play guy in this backfield is Price, the rookie from Notre Dame. Right, he made had a ton of great film at Notre Dame. I'm not sure if Seahawks fans have heard me use this description yet. I know Lions did in this offseason. I don't think Wilson raises the ceiling of the running back room and the run game overall, or even the floor. But I think he strengthens the floor, strengthens the baseline. Meaning, if Price or Helani was unable to go in a particular game or for a period of time, you could get by with Emanuel Wilson. He could produce on certain concepts that Seattle's offensive line was actually pretty good at executing in 2025. Look, they ran for almost 2,100 yards, which it should be stated that far exceeds what the defense allowed. That's always important, in my opinion. Not just your rushing output on offense or what you allowed on defense, but how does that compare to the other side of the ball? So Mike McDonald and Aiden Durday's defense allowed 1,563 yards. They were basically plus 500 in terms of rushing yards for 2025. I think that's important. The total rushing output and one of the statistical markers illustrates how committed Kubiak was to the run game. They were 11th in the league overall as far as rushing output. Right in line, or I should say just behind, the Patriots, Rams, Falcons, Cowboys, and Jets, within about 130 yards of each of those teams. So 11th was kind of close to 7th, but that's not my main point. What I think is most important is Seattle was at 4.1 yards per carry. That was among the top 11 teams from a rushing output standpoint. That was by far the worst. Someone at like the number 14 or 15 mark from a team standpoint was at 4.1 as well. Everyone else in the top 15, in fact, like the top 17, 4.3, 4.5, 4.6, in some cases 4.7. I'm talking about cross-referencing total rushing yards as a team versus yards per carry as a team for the season. Essentially, and you guys know this already, even during times when the production wasn't great, Kubiak and the offense was committed to it. And so that's what I think. That's what I mean when I say Wilson, I think, strengthens the floor. He can, in a worst-case scenario, be a 3.5, 3.7 yards per carry guy in a game where the run game isn't dominating because you can set up play action. I expect that in a worst-case scenario where he's got to be on the field a lot, I'm talking 6, 7, 8 games because of injury or whatever, the reasoning is, I could see him getting to 550, maybe 600 yards if he had a whole lot more carries than he usually got in Green Bay. What we would like to see is 1 or 2 games this season where he's at 15, 16, 17 carries and gives you 80, 85, maybe 90 yards, to carry the load for whatever reason. 4.1 yards per carry was in the bottom, team-wise for Seattle, was in the bottom 10 of the NFL as an aside. This guy's at 4.5 for his career. We know that the offensive formula, the strategy, worked for Seattle, right? I mean, Clint Kubiak got a job with the Raiders. A whole bunch of teams wanted him around or would have wanted him around. 28.3 or 28.4 points per game, third in the league. Like I said, the strategy worked. I think Wilson ensures that they can use that strategy again if need be. In games where we expect the defense to be in control, you can continue to run the football and set up play action. Super talented wide receiver group, in my opinion, that they'll rely on. Maybe they'll rely on that more than they did in 2025. JSN, Shaheed, obviously headline that group, but Cooper Kupp, Horton, it forms, I think, an amazing wide receiver group, not to mention A.J. Barner, who was second on the team with 52 catches and 6 touchdowns. Essentially, I think that Emanuel Wilson strengthens the floor for what Seattle wants to do, presumably, and what they'll be able to do if he's on the field in place of Jadarian Price, George Helani, or maybe Zach Charbonnet's injury recovery takes longer than we expect or than we hope. In any case, if you guys enjoyed this video, again, it's part 1 of my look at the running back group for Seattle. I kind of timed these up with the beginning of training camp. I'll get to George Helani, a very underrated running back in my opinion as well, a little bit later, possibly next week. I appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. And number 2, finally, if you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this content, specifically to look at Emanuel Wilson, what he's good at, and use some film to display or back up my points, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach. Appreciate you guys' time.